Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Shabbat shalom. So welcome to those in person and welcome to those participating through our live stream. So tonight we have a special themed Shabbat service for the holiday of Tisha B'Av. Normally when you hear holiday, you think, oh, that'll be nice. But this is a more somber day of commemoration rather than celebration, which is about the destruction of the ancient temples in Jerusalem. So we're marking the destruction of the first temple, its rebuilding, and then the destruction of the second temple. And this day became a day to kind of put all the sadness into. So if there were other unfortunate things that happened in history, the beginning of the first Crusades, which affected Jewish communities in a negative way, Jews being expelled from various countries, all of that, even if it didn't exactly happen on the 9th of Av, which is what Tisha B'Av means, all of that kind of sadness was piled onto the day. So we have one day where we're like, all right, let's be sad together. Let's remember this time, acknowledge it, and then move forward. So that's what we'll be doing tonight. And this psalm that we'll start with is marking that period where the first temple was destroyed in Jerusalem, and the people living there were exiled to a new land. So the Babylonian Empire conquered, and the Jews ended up no longer in Jerusalem, trying to figure out what does it mean to be Jewish when you're not in Judah or Judea anymore, right? So what is my identity now that I'm this foreigner in this strange land? Can I still be Jewish here? What does that look like? So we'll sing this song in Hebrew, and then we have a reader. Ed is going to read what it means in English. And if you can pick up the tune, feel free to sing along. It's a little bit mournful because we're talking about the destruction of the ancient temple. Al Naharot Bavel, Al Naharot Bavel, Sham Yashavnu Kam Bachinu Bezochrenu Et Zion. It's a lot of words. We'll try it all again. Al Naharot Bavel, Al Naharot Bavel, Sham Yashavnu Gam Bachinu Bezochrenu Et Zion. So that's Psalm 137, and Ed's going to read it for us in English.
By the rivers of the Babylon we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. There on the poplars we hung our harps. For there our captors asked us for songs. Our tormentors demanded songs of joy. They said, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a foreign land? If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy.
Thank you, Ed. So now we continue in our service handout, which can be found on the table near the entrance, with the reading on page 2, The Journey of Healing. Survival is not healing. Survival is one step on the journey of healing. Healing is the body's and mind's repair, a processing and integration of the physical and emotional assault that we have survived. On the other side of healing, we emerge reshaped, uniquely different from the person who began the journey. Will be completely healed, body and mind, with insight, compassion, and wisdom. And we continue with the responsive reading at the top of page 3. Each person present tonight is a valuable link in the chain of healing. Each person helps to create a sacred place which holds the possibility for greater wholeness, even in the midst of pain and suffering. Through prayer and poetry, song and readings, and most importantly, by creating a community where we offer one another strength, we pray that we will all come away better able to face the journey we must walk. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, a Hasidic master beset by his own demons, taught that a human being reaches in 3 directions: inward toward self, outward toward other people, and upward toward God. The real secret, he taught, is that the 3 are one. When we connect with self, we can then reach out to help others. And we continue on page 5, and I'd like to invite up Grace to light our Shabbat candles.
May the light of these Shabbat candles banish gloom, anxiety, and worry from our hearts. May the Shabbat bring us peace, serenity, and some much-needed rest. Keep a glow within us, O God, the hope that soon our burdens will be lighter and we will discover new reasons to rejoice in life. You are the source of all light. We look to you for strength and hope.
Thank you, Grace. So at this point in our service, we think of the week that has passed and we hold on to all of the good things from this past week. So if you had an experience that inspired gratitude, if you have some good news to share, no matter how big or how small, I invite you to share that joy with the community now. Yeah, Pat?
I was babysitting a friend's dog.
Awesome. It's good to have some canine companionship. Yeah, Pat?
Last Shabbat, I got to see my son and one of my grandsons stop, and it was lovely.
Wonderful. Yeah, Alex? Mazel tov. Very cool. So we thank God for all these blessings, including the blessing of simply being alive for this moment in time with the words of Shehechianu at the bottom of page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen. And we continue with the reading on the top of page 6. God, give us the strength to transcend setbacks and pain, to put our difficulties into perspective. God, give us the strength to take the path less traveled and more complex. May we abandon none of your creations. May our personal pain never be used as an excuse to stop heeding your call. Let us always strive to give, even if we ourselves feel alone and impoverished. So we continue on page 10 with Lecha Dodi. Lecha likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Hishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor habracha, Merosh mikedem nesucha, Sof maaseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, Ki ba'orech kumi ori, Uri shir daberi, Kevod Adonai alaich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. We rise together and face the entrance to symbolically welcome in the presence of Shabbat. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha u'b'tzola, Toch emunei am segula, Boi chala, boi chala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. And we continue with the call to worship, the Baruch Hu, the top of page 11. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Barechu et Adonai Hamivorach. Baruch Adonai Hamivorach. Hamivorach leolam vaed. Hamivorach, Hamivorach leolam vaed. Grief never ends, but it changes like the tide. Waves of grief come and go like the cycles of day and night, except with less predictability. The sobbing may come out of nowhere with tears like torrential rainfall, overwhelming yet cathartic as a summer storm, as they remove the dust from memories, now glistening with love, and give way to a moment of serenity once again. Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravi. Continue the top of page 12 with Roll into Dark. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. And we continue with the core teaching of Judaism, the Shema, the bottom of page 13. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. Continue the top of page 14. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al vavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ug'shartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim Lehiot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. Grieving allows us to heal, to remember with love rather than pain. It is a sorting process. One by one you let go of the things that are gone, and you mourn for them. One by one you take hold of the things that have become a part of who you are, and you build again. We continue with Mi Chamocha, the middle of page 16. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha netar b'kodesh Nora tehilot osef ele Nora tehilot osef ele. And we continue with Vishamru, the top of page 17. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Lidorotam berit olam Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Lidorotam berit olam Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael Oti leolam, oti leolam, Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Lasot et ha-Shabbat, Lidorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim, asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Lidorotam berit olam Uvayom hashvi Shabbat v'nafash Shabbat v'nafash Shabbat v'nafash Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Lidorotam berit olam. There are many gates to heaven. Nowadays, however, they are all closed. All of them, that is, except one, the gate of tears. When someone prays to God with the eyes of tears, those prayers fly straight through the gates of tears. The gate of tears is never closed. Please rise for our central prayer, the Amidah. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, v'Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לפני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל, אתה רב להושיע, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, בנאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. Please be seated. We continue with a relatively quiet moment for personal prayer and reflection. Page 22. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol eit uvechol shah bishlomecha. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. At this point in our service, we think of loved ones who are in need of healing. Tonight, we think especially of Beth Levine, Rabbi Jerry Levy, Jean Sanders, Sue Shires, Matthew Nigro. Are there other loved ones whose healing you wish to pray for tonight? With the power of community, we pray for their refuah shlema, their complete healing of body and or spirit. With the words of Misha Berach, the bottom of page 27. Misha Berach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu source of strength, who bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mikor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. So we usually do a Torah reading at this point in our service, but in commemoration of Tisha B'Av, instead of reading a passage from the Torah, we're going to read from another part of the Tanakh, or Hebrew Bible, which is the book of Eicha, or Lamentations as it's known in English. So this is a book that comes from the time the first temple was destroyed. Jerusalem was this magnificent city. It's sort of like, I don't know, New York City, right? It was a big, big deal. And they just all of a sudden just basically wiped out, right? Conquerors come in, they smash stuff, they light it on fire. They're like, Jews, leave, right? You can go to Babylonia. We don't care where you go. Just get out of here, right? So the beginning of the exile, these people who used to be respected officials, now there's no Jewish government there, right? So they're figuring out what is society when these conquerors come in and what has happened to this beautiful city of Jerusalem. So we have a few readers. Elliot's going to start us off with a segment from the first part of Lamentations. And as you hear this, just kind of imagine if you'd grown up in Jerusalem and everything was just being destroyed before your eyes.
How deserted lies the city, once so full of people. How like a widow is she, who once was great among the nations. She who was queen among the provinces has now become a slave. Bitterly she weeps at night, tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, there is no one to comfort her. All her friends have betrayed her, they have become her enemies. After affliction and harsh labor, Judah has gone into exile. She dwells among the nations, she finds no resting place. All who pursue her have overtaken her in the midst of her distress. The roads to Zion mourn, for no one comes to her appointed festivals. All her gateways are desolate, her priests groan. Her young women grieve, and she is in bitter anguish. Her foes have become her masters, her enemies are at ease. The Lord has brought her grief because of her many sins. Her children have gone into exile, captive before the foe.
And Ariana, will you read a segment from chapter 2? There's only 5 chapters, so you don't have to worry about it being too long.
The hearts of the people cry out to the Lord. You walls of daughter Zion, let your tears flow like a river, day and night. Give yourself no relief, your eyes no rest. Arise, cry out in the night, as the watches of the night begin. Pour out your heart like water in the presence of the Lord. Lift up your hands to him for the lives of your children who faint from hunger at every street corner. Young and old lie together in the dust of the streets. My young men and young women have fallen by the sword.
And Stan, chapter 3.
I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore I will wait for him.
And Joanne, chapter 4.
How the gold has lost its luster, the fine gold become dull. The sacred gems are scattered at every street corner. How the precious children of Zion, once worth their weight in gold, are now considered as pots of clay, the work of a potter's hands. Even jackals offer their breasts to nurse their young. But my people have become heartless, like ostriches in the desert. Because of thirst, the infant's tongue sticks to the roof of its mouth. The children beg for bread, but no one gives it to them. Those who once are delicacies are destitute in the streets. Those brought up in royal purple now lie on ash heaps.
The last chapter. The elders are gone from the city gate. The young men have stopped their music. Joy is gone from our hearts. Our dancing has turned to mourning. You, Lord, reign forever. Your throne endures from generation to generation. Why do you always forget us? Why do you forsake us so long? Restore us to yourself, Lord, that we may return. Renew our days as of old. So you may recognize the Hebrew of this ending of the book. We made it a part of the Torah service when we returned the Torah to the Ark. So if you want to sing with me, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. So that's a prayer of return after a period of exile. And tonight I want to have a discussion about Tisha B'Av and exile and why we remember this. So the first question is, what benefits are there to remembering the exile and other tragedies that our spiritual ancestors experienced? So can you think of one helpful aspect to remembering this? Yeah, Ron?
Well, sometimes when things are very, very good, you forget that everything can change at any instant, whether it be personally or professionally or society.
So sometimes we can get a little arrogant, right? And we're just like, yeah, of course my life is good. I'm awesome, right? And forget that life has ups and downs, not just personally, but as a society, as a world, right? This pandemic is kind of like I guess things can be really difficult sometimes, even if they were great before. So that sense of perspective. Anything else? Yeah, Jackson? Empathy. So just exposing ourselves to other things. So maybe like we haven't been super affected by too many negative things in our own personal lives, but reading stories about other people who struggle, right? Whether they're fictional stories, whether it's a movie we watch, or if it's an ancient text where you're like, oh, this is what my ancestors went through. Seeing these kind of stories, how the people suffer, right, can bring empathy within us, and especially when we see people responding in positive ways as a result of that suffering. Any other positive things? Yes, Dan?
Well, so much of it is both this and the psalm before about exile and connection to Jerusalem, connection to the land of Israel. And so it's really a very strong message about our peoplehood, about our community, that, so many of the ties that, besides the intellectual, besides the theological, besides all of that, there's this other thread that's woven in.
So it definitely teaches us about peoplehood, community, and identity, right? We're kind of wired to want to know who we are, right? When we're kids, we try out different toys. When we're teenagers, we listen to different music. When we're adults, we're like, oh, what profession should I go into, right? We're looking for all these things to define ourselves. But here it's saying, here's a piece of the puzzle, right? This is where you come from, whether it's from your biological ancestors or your spiritual ancestors, to know that you've got this connection to this greater community, this peoplehood. So then the next question is, during the recent pandemic, did you ever feel like you were in exile in some way? Yeah, Deb.
I actually was fortunate to feel very connected to people through Zoom and things like that, and walking my dog and seeing my neighbors. So I feel very fortunate.
Mm-hmm. So I think some people might, especially like really, really extroverted people who had like super packed schedules, seeing people all the time, might have felt a greater loss, right? And like exiled from their former life. But it would be kind of an exaggeration to compare what we experienced to what happened to our ancestors in Jerusalem, right? They didn't have Zoom to be like, oh, hey, how's everything going in Jerusalem? Oh, it's still on fire, right? You didn't have that technology, right, to keep in touch. So there was more alienation. Your sibling could be, sent to Babylonia. You could be sent somewhere else. You've got that scrambling, right, in that exile. Did anyone feel emotionally like a little more connected to the idea of exile as a result of change so quickly? Yeah, Ron?
Of course.
Yeah, you're like, duh, yeah.
I don't see how you couldn't. And I found myself reaching out to a lot of people I hadn't seen in a long time by any means necessary, just to kind of assure myself that they were still there, that there were other people in the world.
Mm-hmm. So when you're told to stay home by yourself, right, keep the safe social distance, right, you can feel really disconnected, and that can lead you to seek connection. Yeah, Alan?
I felt that I needed the help in the pandemic, so I quit my job and joined the Virginia Reserve Medical Corps and gave the vaccine, mostly at the Richmond Race Club.
That's awesome. So there were some figures, right, during the exile in Jerusalem who were like, my people are suffering, right? I can't just stand here and cry. Someone's got to do something. Someone's got to feed these hungry children. Someone's got to take care of these wounds, right? So you have people who step up in all of these different crises to help their people, to help their community. Yeah, Ariana?
Stepping up and helping people can also be its own sort of isolating too, because a lot of people don't understand like how stressful it can be to constantly be dealing with like the pandemic, like people coming and going and being exposed and being at risk all the time to dangers.
Mm-hmm. So there's definitely different experiences with that. Does anyone remember kind of the beginning when we started to see some like minor food shortages, or at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was visiting my grandmother who was like on her deathbed, and California was out of bread, and that was her last request for food. So when I got back, there was mostly food, but no toilet paper. So I think, did anyone feel in that moment maybe a little bit like our ancestors in Jerusalem who, you saw the passage like where the kids are just begging for bread, and the adults are like, there is none. Like, eat some grass if you can find some. Yeah, you had plans, they're canceled. Yeah. So kind of like Jerusalem, right? Overnight, conquerors come in, boom, it's gone. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a disorienting piece to the exile. Beth and then David?
I think we're so used to having so much at our easy access
So just a small taste of that. Yeah, David?
Before the pandemic hit, I had been coming here for Shabbat services like clockwork. And it was, I mean, I got to the point where I didn't need to read the service. I knew everything by heart. Um, and then the rug was pulled out from under me. All the other people I had seen attending also at clockwork, I couldn't connect with.
So just a very sudden loss of unexpected things, right? Whether it's the people or the experiences or even products that you used to take for granted that they would always be on the shelf. All right, so last question is, there's a little intro to it. So on Tisha B'Av, we remember the destruction of not only the second temple, but also the first temple. So the first time the temple was destroyed in the year 586 before the Common Era was by the Babylonians. And less than 50 years later, there was another empire. So the Babylonians came and conquered the region. Right after that, the Persians conquered. So there was a Persian king named Cyrus who said, all right, like, it means nothing to me, right? Jews, if you want to go back to Jerusalem, you're welcome, you're free to go home, right? So in a lifetime, right, a child could have been exiled, right, from Jerusalem, been sent to Babylonia, and then able to return before retirement age, right? So you have that experience, and they pretty much immediately rebuild the temple. And then later on, right, that temple lasts for a good chunk of time. Then the Greeks come, then the Romans come. The Romans destroy the second temple in the year 70 of the Common Era, so almost 2,000 years ago. And when that happened, they didn't rebuild. People thought about it, but they basically had to reinvent Judaism, because when the temple was standing, if you wanted to celebrate Passover, right, you bring your animal, you slaughter it, you have a cookout, right? And there weren't that many prayers that you did. You might do individual prayers, but when the temple was gone, to have a communal life, they had to like remake what that was. And prayer and Torah study and other practices became the new animal sacrifice, right? So it's a big, big change. So we've got the first temple model, which is rebuild, go back to normal as soon as possible. And we've got the second temple model, which is, oh, that was destroyed? Maybe we should create something new instead of just trying to repeat what was in the past. So when it comes to the pandemic, do you think that we should take a first temple approach of just trying to rebuild everything that was before the pandemic? Or should we do the second temple approach and say, you know what, it's time to be creative. Like, we lost something, we tried new stuff. Let's be very, very creative as we move forward. Yeah, Fran? Mm-hmm.
It's this feeling of dread when you know something is going to happen. Will this mean marrying? Will we be pushed back to last year? Or will we plow through it? And I don't think anybody knows.
So I think that's a good point. We're still in this period of uncertainty, right? I think a lot of us are so sick of all the restrictions from the pandemic that we're like, all right, whatever we can do that feels normal again, like, we miss that so much, let's do it now. And we've still got to be careful, right? Because there are many unknowns still. Yeah, Alex?
I think that there definitely needs to be more of a second temple approach. A lot of things need to be torn down and revised. A lot of people have realized that with mental health, they need their at-home jobs. They need that break from the office, and certain things just aren't cutting it anymore. And we need to revise a lot of what's been ingrained in us, I feel.
Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of societal expectations that you deal with traffic, right? Then you sit in your office for 12 hours a day, sit in more traffic, right? and don't have time to socialize or prepare healthy foods, right? And we wonder why so many people are sick in our society. Right? So now they had something that let them question, like, why were we doing this every day for years on end? Yeah, Ron, and then Eileen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ron and then Stan.
I think it's a big opportunity to invent a lot of things, to correct a lot of shortcomings that have been pointed out, like preparedness for the next pandemic, like unemployment compensation, like medical care. Just to name three really glaring things that were pointed out as being, completely inadequate to the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Childcare, the way we travel, incorporate all the new things that we've learned into the old.
I think that's a good strategy. Yeah, Stan, what were you going to add?
Well, you're talking about how things never went back to the way they were before. From the time of sacrifices in the temple to prayer being the primary, activity of connection. And one of the catchphrases that you hear is people talk about the new normal. That's what was will never be again. Um, we will have more people going back to work, but I think we'll have more people working from home than we had before the pandemic. I think some people will say, I don't need to be in this office building, and in fact, I can do my job equally well from cabin out in the woods as long as I have a good Wi-Fi connection or whatever. The model we've had of the classroom may never go back, but some things that we were able to do online with Zoom and so forth worked well enough that maybe we don't need to do everything exactly the way we used to do it, and find that there's some hybrids that were, some of the things that were good we want to keep, and some of the adjustments we made maybe are worth keeping.
Yep. And that was basically where I wanted to conclude this discussion is, it doesn't have to be either or, first temple, second temple, that it could be this hybrid where we pay attention to what are the holes that we've noticed, right, that we need to repair. Maybe we tear down this wall and we build the structure in a completely new way based on what was broken before, but keep the things that were actually working, right, to create a sort of a hybrid. Any last thoughts on this topic? Yeah.
Everybody would either come here or not do services for the whole day. Now we're able to do both. So we're incorporating the old, the new into the old.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things, that we're doing in that respect all around the world.
Definitely. And there's been a lot of pluses to that, right? A lot of people who didn't have access to things, those who don't drive at night, right? Or, yep, all sorts of things, they can still feel connected as a result of technology. So using those new things. Right. Excellent. So I'd like to invite up Alan to share some brief announcements on behalf of the board.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's really nice to be here in person and see everybody instead of on TV. Just wanted to share a brief anecdote with you. We were talking about the pandemic. In a few weeks, I'll see my son for the first time in a year and a half. He's an ER doctor in Nashville, and I was always worried since he was on the front line all the time, you know, and they had a lack of protective equipment. And he said to me, "Dad, don't worry, I got it covered." And I said to him, "How did you do that? How did you get the equipment?" He said, "I went to Home Depot." He said they had everything that I needed. They had masks, they had things that I could cover my whole body from head to toe. And thank God he did, and he survived. Be seeing him soon. So I just wanted to share that with you. Announcements. Tomorrow morning there'll be Torah study at 11 a.m. You could either come in person or it's virtual. Another thing that I wanted to mention that's not on the sheet, on August 29th, there'll be the yard sale. So if you have any items that you may want to contribute, you can bring them here. Is there a room, Rabbi, that they?
Yeah, a couple rooms, the back
to-
classrooms.
Okay. And I know Joel is really working hard to collect things. Does anyone have any other announcements? Okay.
I think he was also looking for shoeboxes to put like CDs and DVDs in.
Thank you, Eileen. Anyone else have anything?
Yeah, Deb?
Hi, I'm Deborah Cohen, and I'm looking forward to having the Forum Book Group over at my house on August the 2nd. We're going to have a little potluck with recipes from one of the books we read. So I hope people will come.
Okay.
And I must say, I also hope that people will be vaccinated,
Okay.
as am I.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thanks, Alan. So we continue our service together on page 29 with Aleinu. Please rise for the Aleinu prayer. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gdula leotze breshit, shelo asanu kigoye aratzot, velo samanu kamishbechot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד. Please be seated. At this point in our service, we think of loved ones who have passed away recently or at this time in years past. Tonight we remember with love Marion Weisberg, mother of Marjorie Cohen, grandmother of Samantha King, great-grandmother of Max and Ava King, and the yahrzeits of Sidney Bernstein Jr., longtime member of ORME, Harry Gelblicht, father of Michelle Holt, and Mike Nigro, uncle of Alyssa Freeman. Are there other loved ones we wish to remember tonight? Zichronam livracha, may their memories always be a blessing. Please rise as a community of support for the Mourner's Kaddish on page 31. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shmei rabbah, be'alma divrach hirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehe shmei rabbah mivarach le'olam olomei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmei dekudisha brichu, le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort for all who are bereaved, and let us say, amen. Please be seated. We conclude our service tonight at the top of page 33 with Tefillat HaDerech. May we be blessed as we go on our way. May we be guided in peace. May we be blessed with health and joy. May this be our blessing. Amen. May we be sheltered by the wings of peace. May we be kept in safety and in love. May grace and compassion find their way to every soul. May this be our blessing. Amen. 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 May this be our blessing. Amen. I started a little too high for that part. All right. Well, next week we'll have our pianist back to keep me on key. But I just want to say Shabbat Shalom and thank you to our readers tonight. And please join us in the back for Kiddush and Motzi.